The Galactic Alliance had given humanity an ultimatum: surrender Earth and become a subservient species, or be annihilated. It was a simple choice, really, at least from their perspective. After all, humanity was a young race, barely a blip on the cosmic stage. The Alliance had crushed thousands of species before them, absorbing their resources, technology, and cultures into their empire. They assumed humanity would do the same. But they had underestimated the one thing that set humans apart: sheer, unrelenting stubbornness. When the ultimatum was broadcast across the world, every nation, every leader, every citizen had the same reaction. Laughter. Not the nervous, horrified kind. No, this was the deep, belly-aching laughter of a species that had been through world wars, economic collapses, internet debates, and still managed to survive. Some billionaire immediately turned the threat into a meme, and within an hour, the phrase "bow before the Alliance" was slapped onto coffee mugs and t-shirts. The first major diplomatic response came from a small Australian radio station, which played the song "Never Gonna Give You Up" as a reply transmission. That was humanity's answer: pure, unfiltered defiance wrapped in sarcasm. Of course, not everyone was laughing. In the United Earth Defense Council, a coalition of military strategists, scientists, and political leaders had already started scrambling. Among them, Captain Elias Vance sat at the edge of the strategy table, watching as arguments flared between generals and diplomats. "We have no way of fighting a full-scale war," one of the diplomats said, rubbing his temples. "Their fleet could turn Earth into a cinder before we launch a single missile." "Then we don't fight fair," replied General Lin, her sharp gaze scanning the room. "If we try to match them ship for ship, we lose. But if we fight them the way humanity fights every war, with dirty tricks, unpredictability, and sheer chaos, we stand a chance." Elias smirked. That was exactly why he had been brought into this war council. He wasn't the kind of soldier who followed the rulebook. He was the kind who rewrote it mid-battle. As the debate continued, a holographic map of the solar system flickered into existence above the table, showing the approaching fleet. It was massive. Hundreds of warships, each one the size of a city, bristling with enough firepower to shatter planets. "So," Elias said, leaning back in his chair, "we can't outgun them, can't outrun them, but we sure as hell can outthink them." General Lin's expression barely shifted, but there was a flicker of approval in her eyes. The meeting ended with a single directive: find a way to disrupt, dismantle, or delay the enemy's advance. And that was exactly what Elias intended to do. 2 days later, he found himself in one of Earth's orbital stations, standing in front of a ragtag group of engineers, hackers, and rogue pilots. People who, under normal circumstances, wouldn't even be allowed in a military briefing. "All right," he said, clapping his hands. "Who here has ever hijacked an alien warship?" A few chuckles. Some blank stares. One man, a wiry engineer with a cybernetic eye, hesitated before slowly raising his hand. "Define hijack," he muttered. Elias grinned. "Perfect. You're now my chief operations officer." The plan, as ridiculous as it sounded, was simple. They weren't going to fight the enemy fleet. They were going to steal it. Using a mix of signal jamming tech, cyber warfare, and sheer human audacity, they planned to infiltrate the command ships, disable their internal defenses, and turn their own fleet against them. It was an insane plan, completely reckless, and, if it worked, the greatest military heist in history. But before they could even attempt it, they had to get close enough to board. And that was where things got tricky. That's when a young pilot named Kelly Weaver raised her hand. She had been a civilian shuttle racer before the war effort had recruited her. She leaned against the table with a cocky grin. "You want to get us past their defenses?" she said. "I have an idea, but it's going to involve some unconventional piloting." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Define unconventional." She tapped a few keys on the console, and the holographic display changed to show a formation of small, modified civilian spacecraft. They looked like junkers, barely space-worthy. But that was the point. "We disguise ourselves as space debris," Kelly explained. "Not just any debris, garbage. We launch from Earth, drifting among the thousands of old satellites, dead probes, and orbital junk floating around the planet. Then, using microthrusters, we hitch a ride on the gravitational wake of their fleet. They won't even notice us until it's too late." Silence. Then a low chuckle from General Lin. "This is the most absurd military strategy I've ever heard," she said. "But it might actually work." Elias smirked. "All right, people. Time to see if we can pull off the dumbest, most brilliant heist in galactic history." And so, the plan was set into motion. The first step of humanity's counterstrike had begun. What they didn't know was that the Galactic Alliance had their own plans. And the moment humanity made their first move, the war would truly begin. The first problem with pretending to be space garbage was making sure you actually looked like garbage. Elias Vance had seen some insane military strategies in his time. Deep space ambushes, asteroid slingshot maneuvers, even a naval officer who once suggested ramming an enemy dreadnought with a freighter full of explosives. But this was next-level ridiculous. "Let me get this straight," he said, rubbing his temples. "We're actually painting these ships to look like trash?" Kelly Weaver stood next to a rust-covered shuttle, a paint sprayer in one hand, a smirk on her face. "Would you rather we fly in with 'Shoot Me' written on the hull?" He had to admit, she had a point. The technicians had gone all in on the disguise. Their fleet of repurposed civilian craft was now covered in simulated scorch marks, rust, and even artificial dents. One ship had been modified to look like a derelict food delivery drone. Another had panels loosely dangling, giving it the appearance of barely holding together. The second problem? Figuring out how to survive long enough to execute the plan. They were crammed into an old freighter that smelled like burnt wiring and bad decisions, their flight path plotted to drift along the outer rim of the enemy fleet. Their disguise relied on a simple fact. The Galactic Alliance didn't consider human tech worth scanning. Their ships, advanced as they were, used automated threat analysis. Their sensors wouldn't even register a floating pile of Earth junk. Probably. Kelly leaned back in her pilot's chair, boots propped up on the console as the timer counted down to launch. "So, worst-case scenario," she said. "We get caught and blasted into atoms before we even get close. Best-case scenario, we sneak in, hijack their ships, and take down the biggest military fleet in the galaxy." "Easy. Glad to see you're feeling optimistic," Elias muttered. The countdown hit 0, and the modified thrusters gave a gentle push. Not a full burn, just enough force to nudge them into the right trajectory, blending in with the rest of Earth's orbital debris. From a distance, they looked like just another collection of abandoned satellites and derelict ships. For the first few hours, nothing happened. The Galactic Alliance fleet remained in formation, their enormous warships blotting out the stars, cruising toward Earth with terrifying inevitability. Every so often, a pulse of energy flickered across their hulls, shield fluctuations, sensor sweeps, comms traffic. Inside their disguised freighter, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Elias checked his watch. "We should be close enough to begin Phase 2. A murmur of agreement passed through the crew. The next part was where things got tricky, hacking into the enemy's internal systems. That job fell to the wiry engineer, Calloway, who, as it turned out, had more experience breaking into alien tech than anyone should reasonably have. "You know," Calloway muttered, hunched over his terminal, "back in my younger years, I got arrested for cracking into a Zalari security vault. Took their system down in under 3 minutes." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And what were you trying to steal?" "Oh, nothing valuable," Calloway said. "Just their classified ship schematics. And, their entire library of alien soap operas." Kelly snorted. "You committed grand larceny for soap operas?" Calloway grinned. "You haven't lived until you've seen a Zalari love triangle unfold over 57 episodes." Elias shook his head. "Just get us into the enemy network." Calloway's fingers danced over the console. The trick wasn't brute-forcing their way in. The Galactic Alliance had AI defenses that could squash any standard hacking attempt in seconds. Instead, they had to be subtle. Calloway's solution? The oldest human trick in the book. Phishing. He crafted a fake Alliance command message, an urgent security alert warning of a potential system breach, and sent it to a low-level officer aboard one of the enemy warships. Within minutes, the officer logged into what they thought was an official security portal. In reality, it was Calloway's backdoor into their system. And just like that, they had access. "We're in," Calloway whispered. "I can see their whole damn network." "I can't." "Oh, crap." Elias tensed. "What?" Calloway's face had gone pale. "They know we're here." A flicker of red lights pulsed through the freighter's control panel. Outside, one of the nearest enemy ships suddenly shifted formation. "We tripped something," Calloway said, his voice tight. "They're running an advanced security check." Elias cursed. "Can you shut it down?" Calloway's hands moved fast. "I'm trying. Their system is adapting. Damn it, this thing is learning from us." The modified freighter gave a sudden jolt as enemy scans locked onto them. Their cover was breaking. Then, Kelly did something absolutely insane. She yanked the ship's controls, sending them into a violent spin. The sudden, erratic movement confused the enemy scans just long enough for Calloway to finish his override. The security alert vanished from their system logs. A tense silence stretched across the cabin. Then, slowly, the enemy ship resumed its normal course, as if nothing had happened. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was too damn close. Calloway wiped sweat from his forehead. "Yeah, next time, let's not nearly die in space, all right?" Kelly smirked. No promises. Despite the near disaster, the mission was still on. With access to the enemy's systems, they could finally execute the next phase, sabotaging the fleet from the inside. Elias turned to his team, his expression grim. "We got lucky once. We won't get a second chance. Let's make this count." What none of them realized was that the Galactic Alliance wasn't as blind as they thought. Somewhere, deep within the enemy command ship, someone was watching, waiting, and humanity was about to walk straight into a trap.